The cause of death was listed as drowning. The medical examiner disagreed, presenting evidence that Diatoms disproved the drowning scene. In a meticulous examination of bone marrow samples from the deceased, species of diatoms unique to a freshwater pond were discovered, contradicting the initial assumption that the body had been immersed in seawater where it was found. This discrepancy raised questions about the accuracy of the original investigation and highlighted the importance of microscopic ecological signatures in forensic analysis. The forensic record for this case contains 5 anomalies: the presence of unexpected diatom species, inconsistencies between the water source and biological samples, a lack of verification through environmental testing, misidentification of the primary drowning location, and an incorrect interpretation of post-mortem immersion patterns. This discrepancy raised questions about the accuracy of the original investigation and highlighted the importance of microscopic ecological signatures in forensic analysis. Each one is documented here. Chapter: Case background. The incident under examination occurred in a small lake near Springfield on May 14th. The body of the deceased was discovered by local fishermen, floating approximately 50 meters from shore. Initial observations indicated clear signs of submersion, including fluid in the lungs and dilated blood vessels characteristic of drowning. Based on these findings, authorities concluded that the death had occurred at this very location. However, a deeper investigation was prompted when family members challenged the initial ruling, claiming the deceased had been alive elsewhere prior to entering the water. This dispute led investigators to re-examine both the physical evidence and environmental factors surrounding the lake where the body was found. The critical breakthrough came through an examination of diatoms recovered from bone marrow samples, which did not correspond with the species known to exist in the local lake, suggesting that the deceased had been moved post-mortem. This revelation underscored the necessity for thorough ecological analysis alongside traditional forensic methods, challenging long-standing assumptions about drowning scenarios and highlighting the complexity involved in establishing a definitive cause of death. The critical breakthrough came through an examination of diatoms recovered from bone marrow samples, which did not correspond with the species known to exist in the local lake, suggesting that the deceased had been moved post-mortem. Chapter: Initial findings upon arrival at the reported location. First responders noted a body floating in a small lake within a residential park. The deceased was positioned face down, partially submerged, with no immediate signs of external trauma visible upon cursory examination. A preliminary medical assessment conducted on-site indicated pulmonary edema and fluid in the lungs consistent with drowning. Based on these observations, coupled with the presence of the body in water, the initial manner of death was classified as a probable drowning incident. However, an anomaly emerged during subsequent autopsychological analysis. The absence of visible injuries and lack of defensive wounds suggested no struggle had occurred at the scene. Additionally, the precise positioning of the deceased's body relative to shore vegetation raised questions about whether this was indeed the primary location of death, or if the body might have been moved post-mortem. This scenario prompted a more thorough investigation into environmental factors and microscopic evidence, leading to an examination of diatoms in the bone marrow samples. The subsequent analysis revealed that the diatom species present did not match those known to inhabit the lake where the body was discovered, indicating a discrepancy between the location of death and the site of discovery. Chapter: Forensic investigation. Upon arrival at the aquatic site, investigators collected water samples from various depths and locations. A thorough examination of the surrounding vegetation and sediments yielded no significant traces of the deceased's presence prior to recovery. At the morgue, bone marrow aspirates were extracted from the femur of the deceased under sterile conditions. Diatom analysis revealed an unexpected absence of freshwater diatoms typically associated with local water bodies. Instead, a marine species indicative of coastal environments was identified within the bone marrow samples. This finding contradicted the initial assumption that the drowning occurred at the site where the body was discovered. The chain of custody documentation meticulously recorded each step from collection to laboratory analysis, ensuring the integrity and reliability of the evidence. Upon retrieval of the deceased, initial autopsy revealed pulmonary fluid indicative of drowning. However, a comprehensive forensic investigation was initiated to determine the water's source and confirm the location of the incident. Samples from various body tissues were subjected to detailed analysis. Bone marrow samples were extracted for histological examination, focusing on diatom presence and species identification. Microscopic analysis confirmed the presence of unique diatom species in the bone marrow that did not match those found in the local water body where the deceased was discovered. Subsequent environmental sampling from multiple potential sites identified a distinct diatom assemblage consistent with an industrial reservoir several kilometers away. The concentration of these diatoms, measured at 1,300 cells/ml in the bone marrow versus less than 50 cells/ml in the initial location's water sample, provided unequivocal evidence that the body had been moved post-mortem. The examination commenced with the collection of water samples from the purported drowning site. Diatom analysis revealed a specific composition unique to that location. Concurrently, bone marrow samples were extracted from the deceased, revealing diatoms that did not match those found in the initial water sample. This discrepancy suggested the body had been moved post-mortem to another aquatic environment with distinct diatom species. Radiocarbon dating and histological examination of tissues provided a more precise post-mortem interval estimate, confirming the timeline proposed by microscopic evidence. The sequence of events indicated that the deceased was likely alive in an area with different water characteristics prior to death, thus challenging the initial drowning location theory. This forensic approach underscored the necessity for thorough ecological verification before accepting surface-level assumptions about cause and circumstances of death. The presence of diatoms within the deceased's bone marrow indicated a significant post-mortem interval during which waterborne organisms were introduced into the body. Analysis revealed specific diatom species that did not correlate with those found in the original drowning site, suggesting relocation after death. This finding challenged the initial assumption that pulmonary diatoms alone confirmed the drowning location. Expert testimony would confirm that while the presence of diatoms can indicate immersion, their identification and distribution are critical for accurate scene reconstruction. The expert would assert under oath that without matching the specific diatom species found at the water source to those in the deceased's body, a definitive determination cannot be made regarding the site of drowning. This evidence highlights the necessity for meticulous ecological analysis alongside traditional forensic findings. Chapter Resolution: The initial assessment of the deceased's cause of death as drowning at the site where the body was discovered has been thoroughly challenged by forensic analysis. The central finding that emerged from this investigation involved the presence and identification of diatoms in bone marrow samples, which did not correspond to the diatom species found in the water at the location reported for the incident. Analysis revealed distinct differences between the diatoms recovered from the deceased's bone marrow and those isolated from the purported drowning site. This discrepancy provided compelling evidence that the body had been moved post-mortem before being placed in the water, thereby invalidating the initial assumption of a local drowning event based solely on the presence of water in the lungs. The reevaluation shifted focus to identifying alternative sites where diatom species matching those found in bone marrow might have originated. This new direction underscored the critical importance of thorough forensic examination and ecological context verification beyond surface-level indicators, such as fluid in the lungs, challenging the notion that initial assumptions are always correct. The reevaluation shifted focus to identifying alternative sites where diatom species matching those found in bone marrow might have originated. This case underscores the necessity of corroborating macroscopic observations with microscopic evidence in drowning investigations, highlighting the critical role of diatom analysis for accurate scene reconstruction. Assumptions must be rigorously tested to avoid misinterpretation of physical evidence. The file remains open,